Now,
on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 5:06 and we're here. We're awake. We're ready. We're prepared. We're on the ball. Right, Julie?
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry. Were you not quite in place there?
Plugged in.
And we're ready to get you where you need to go on this Tuesday morning, starting out at 6:05 with John Schweppe, Director of Policy at the American Principles Project. We could use a little American Principle discussion here. Talk about the latest Supreme Court decision, arguments that are about to take place in a free speech case. 6:35, former Virginia State Senator Amanda Chase on some gun bills that are being pushed through Richmond. 7:05, Mark Chenoweth, that's the President and Chief Legal Officer at the New Civil Liberties Alliance. Talk about the bump stock rulings that are coming down. And then at 7:35, Representative Andy Harris of Maryland. And if that ain't enough, our 8 o'clock hour is loaded too. State Senator of Virginia, Ron Vitiello. I got to ask him about the Winsome Sears thing with Donica Round. That was a cathartic moment. If you didn't see what happened in Richmond there with Winsome Sears, stick around. We'll tell you all about it. Also, Ron is running for the U.S. Senate. Did I get that right? He's not a current Virginia senator. I misread that. He has no idea what happened with Winsome Sears. He'll be learning when we talk about the story just along with everyone else.
I love how yes.
Well,
definitely.
I saw Virginia and Senate in there in the description,
me too.
and then no, he's running for the U.S. Senate for Virginia. And then at 8:35, Byron, New York. I'm Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock. I'm sorry, I'm a little off my game. For dinner last night, I had cornflakes. So there's a big non-controversy going on right now because the CEO of Kellogg's, he was at CNBC or Fox Business, one of these business shows, talking about the state of the economy, what that's doing to the brand, whether the price of everything is hurting him like everyone else because of this lousy, disgusting, horrific, broken economy.
Yes.
Bidenomics is working, by the way. I'm
sure.
sorry. It's been a good hour and a half since someone said that. So he says, well, actually, we're finding new and interesting ways to present our product for the American people. And I just want to say, we recognize that the cost of meat isn't crazy, cost of eggs, you're a mom, you're feeding 3 growing boys and 1 pretty grown boy there in your house.
Yes.
And so he said, in fact, we're finding that many families are turning to cereal for dinner, and we encourage that. We're actually presenting our product as an alternative, a cost-saving alternative. It has nutrients. It has your 4 basic food groups. And he goes on sort of extolling the virtues of Kellogg's cereal as an alternative for dinner. And I was like, what are you talking about?
How dare you?
But it's like, it's actually reality.
Cereals have been fortified, too. They have vitamins that they would never have had in before they've been added in. You can even find, my son is really
Didn't the government make them do that? Because, children need to start their day.
Yes,
and
there's a bunch of mandates and things like that. But I mean, I think they put it in now just because it's like, hey, this is dense in vitamin C
Right,
or
it's
whatever.
become a selling point.
My son is really into protein. He's at that age where he's lifting and he's like
gaining season.
Yes, and
bulking season.
And so anything with protein, they add this stuff to cereals. So cereals actually are now
many cereals. Some of them are a bowl of
cereals,
it's a bowl of candy with milk.
Right, exactly. Now I'm not suggesting you buy them like the Reese's peanut butter cereal, which that actually exists.
What's your favorite cereal? Real fast before we continue here.
Basically Cheerios, because
Really?
I'm not a big cereal. I don't like
That's pretty
sweet.
boring.
I'm not a big sweet person.
Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
That is good. I know.
With whole milk.
Yes.
Cinnamon Toast Crunch. Also, anything in the Captain Crunch family I'd be happy with.
Yeah.
That's when I'm eating like a child.
I actually love granola. Okay, if I'm going to be official, if I'm going to be strictly, grits are my favorite cereal.
Oh, grits, sure.
I mean, but it's not really a cereal.
It isn't. No. Granola with a little Greek yogurt instead of milk is nice. But and also if I wanted to go not the sugar bomb route like Cinnamon Toast Crunch or Captain Crunch or anything, the peanut butter Captain Crunch, the little round peanut butter balls.
That sounds disgusting.
God, they're amazing. Anyway, I would have. I guess I would go with Frosted Flakes or just basic corn flakes.
I just love cereal in general because it's as, like you said, like a topping.
But what about cereal for dinner?
Well, again, they are so fortified now. They're not like, it really isn't like eating sawdust in the 70s. This stuff is usually pretty nutritionally robust.
I don't think the criticism is that it's like that. The criticism is, first of all, the criticism
he's agreeing that the economy sucks.
Right. He's undermining Bidenomics.
Yeah. That's the what they're really angry about is that this guy is saying maybe turn to cereal because food really is expensive. And to the media that wants to tell you everything's fine, this sort of messes up that message. So that's ultimately what they're angry at. He's smart. He knows that people look, moms of teenagers, I mean, boys and girls. It's not just boys. I mean, I buy ramen.
Yeah.
I buy cereal. We go through so much milk. I buy a lot of cheap things because I need to feed them, and they are garbage disposals. So
have you reached the point sometimes just in frustration? Because I have multiple children, and we often get the, what are you having for dinner? Oh, I don't want that. I want this, and I want that. And then you just say, you know what? Pour yourself a bowl of cereal.
Just last night.
Daddy needs a few. Oh, just last
night. Last night we have leftover nights where we've just piled up a lot of leftovers because I cook a lot. And so leftover night makes them mad because they don't necessarily get a choice. They get and
those poor
not
things.
That they get a choice. I mean, we believe in family dinners.
Yeah.
So I cook a lot. We all eat the same thing, but it's fresh. My kids have gotten to be really snobby about if it's not. They feel like I don't know, if it's warmed up, it's somehow lesser. Mm-hmm. So they're very annoying. So yeah, I did some yelling last night, and I was like, "You will eat your leftover meatloaf and be happy."
But it wasn't cereal night.
It was not.
But you have had days like that. It's like,
yes.
It's just pour yourself a bowl of cereal.
My kids call it, "Am I on my own?" They sometimes will say, "Am I on my own?" And I say, "Yes." And they'll have cereal, or they'll have ramen, or they'll have. My son has actually set ramen on fire in the microwave, so he did that twice.
Wait, ramen, literally all you do is boil some water.
No, he forgot to put the water in. So literally the spice packet somehow burst into flames because he put it in for 6 minutes. So yeah, ramen will set on fire.
This is the one who wants to be a Marine. It's all making sense now. All right, so here is Gary Pilnick, the CEO of Kellogg. Listen to the exchange here, by the way, because the CNBC reporter, the journalist here, is like, "Oh, that's your message? Eat it for dinner? Aren't you worried that might land the wrong way?" You know, it's a little snobby.
Tends to be a great destination when consumers are under pressure. So some of the things that we're doing is first messaging. We got to reach the consumer where they are. So we're advertising about cereal for dinner. If you think about the cost of cereal for a family versus what they might otherwise do, that's going to be much more affordable.
I'm all for innovation and marketing, but the idea of having cereal for dinner, is there the potential for that to land the wrong way?
We don't think so. In fact, it's landing really well right now, Carl. When we look at all of our data, of course, we would know that breakfast cereal is the #1 choice for in-home consumption. We understand that for breakfast. It turns out that over 25% of our consumption is outside the breakfast occasion. A lot of it's at dinner, and that occasion continues to grow.
What person hasn't eaten a bowl of cereal when they're tired and they get
Yes.
home? I love how Carol's like,
I think it's perfectly makes sense, and it does reflect. I think the pushback that he's getting is not because of people fearing about nutrients or fearing about that.
100%.
It's that this is exposing how desperate people are right now.
Absolutely.
And even though cereal is more expensive as well, it's still a better alternative than, hamburger.
Well, he's smart. Look, you put some berries, some yogurt, some cereal, out, and the kids are happy, and they're going, and it's nutritionally dense.
Not keto friendly necessarily.
No.
That is one of the drawbacks of having your cereal.
They do have keto. It's kind of that fake keto cereal, but they do.
But is
have
it just
options.
like a bowl of beef jerky?
It's one of those things where it has like 400 carbs and then like 390 grams of fiber. So you'll be on the toilet.
Yeah,
all night.
colon blow. I remember that one. It's 5:15 WMAL traffic and weather every 10 minutes. First on the fives.
WMAL, making sense of mainstream media because the double standard is real. Download the WMAL app to stream us for free.
Some more insights into how bad things are for American families right now. And, the Consumer Price Index sort of takes a look at various items that the government has decided is sort of in this menu of staples that an American family will have to purchase on a daily, weekly, monthly, annual basis, right? And some of the things are valid and some aren't. And they always juggle it around and stuff. But there's one item in the Consumer Price Index that pretty much stays constant. food. You got to buy food.
Yeah.
And food in particular is absolutely astronomically out of hand. This sort of dovetails into that issue with Kellogg's cereal being the alternative for a lot of working families. Apparently, right now, Americans are spending a larger percentage of their income on food than they have in 3 decades, Julie.
Yeah, and that's one thing that in America sets us apart is that we typically use less of our disposable income
Right.
on food.
Right.
And because we have so much abundance. And that's, in Europe, it's much more expensive. If you go overseas, you know that your groceries are going to be more expensive. So that has always marked America as one of the benefits of living in America. Not anymore. We are reaching Europe and some Asian country level of prices. People are really struggling.
By the end of 2023, consumers were paying nearly 20% more for the same basket of groceries as they were in 2021. By the way, what does 2023 and 2021 have in common? Both of those were years that Joe Biden was president, and he rolled in his economic plan. Remember Build Back Better? I guess this is what it looks like. Dining out costs are climbing as well. It pays to eat in despite how expensive it is to eat in.
We don't even go out anymore. I mean, we hardly ever go to restaurants, and we may order in, we may order takeout, but going to the restaurants is just impossible.
This is the highest percentage since 1991 when George Herbert Walker Bush was president, basically serving out the third term of Ronald Reagan's economy. Right now, and by the way, that economy, as it took a bit of a dip when George Bush was president, was bad enough that it ushered in Bill Clinton as president. And it's nothing compared to what we're feeling and experiencing right now. Consumers in the U.S. spent 11% of their disposable income on food, on eating. And it's the kind of thing that you can't really eliminate from your budget. You can get rid of the gym membership. You can maybe cut down on some recreation.
There's this other thing that's happening is that many families are, going back to what we were talking about earlier, are going this sort of cereal route where they're not eating as well. They're not eating what they want. They're making changes.
They're not eating fresh vegetables.
Right.
They're not eating, lean proteins and things like that.
I am buying a lot more canned goods, a lot more frozen food to sort of bridge that.
By the way, another big part of this, we talk about energy independence and not relying on foreign countries and the cost of bringing in oil and petrol and things like that. This is similar to, we rely on foreign countries now for a lot of the food that we used to grow and raise right here at home. That's why it used to be very affordable to be able to eat. It's not as much anymore. Take a look at your fruits and vegetables and see how much of that comes from Latin America and South America. And that's a problem as well. It's 521.
Making sense of your world.
I agree with you 100%.
News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
There's a lot of us out there.
Making sense of the news.
So some cases were heard in Florida and Texas over some new laws about social media. Of course, they're being protested on First Amendment grounds. I do want to let you know, by the way, it's a good time to remind you that at 6:05, we're going to be joined by John Schweppe. He's with the Director of Policy at the American Principles Project, specifically about these cases. So state laws right now enacted in Florida and Texas prohibit social media platforms from stopping and censoring certain political viewpoints, which, and they had to do that because the federal government not only wouldn't do this, but actually participated in the censorship, right? And now this could potentially give the Supreme Court really big say in how millions of Americans get their news and information, and whether sites like Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and TikTok should be able to make their own decisions about how to moderate information. They'll call it spam, or they'll call it bots, or they'll call it hate speech, and so-called election misinformation. But of course, last year's election misinformation is today's front page news story on the Washington Post. So who gets to make those decisions? That's kind of what these laws are trying to jump in the middle of. They basically ban these online platforms from removing posts that express opinions, especially political opinions. So we'll see how that argument goes. There's a dozen Republican attorneys general that say the government should treat social media like the phone companies and other utilities treat speech, right? And they've always said that they're doing this because they want to protect their advertisers, right? Advertisers come in and say, oh, we don't want to put our money on a platform that has hate speech.
Right.
But really that's translated to, conservative content.
That's right. Yeah.
And they do that because there are radical left-wing groups like Media Matters for America who go out of their way to say, Kmart, do you want your brand associated with, Larry O'Connor?
White
and they're
supremacy.
and what ends up happening is these advertisers say, you know what, let's just get out of all advertising for any content that might be associated with politics, right or left. And ironically, left-wing sites are now suffering because of that. And so, listen, it's a very tangled mess, but it shouldn't be. Free speech is free speech. And free speech should be allowed to prevail, right?
Yeah, it'll be good to talk to John about that.
It will, and we'll see what he thinks the Supreme Court's going to decide on this. It's 5:30.
WMAL-FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station.
Making sense of the news.
News Talk 105.9.
News now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
5:36 on this 27th day of February. Good Lord, we're already
I know.
1/6 of the way through 2024. I had to reduce to the common denominator there or break it down. I was going to say 2/12, and then I realized that doesn't sound right.
You're
It's
right.
1/6.
Yeah, very good.
I know. There wasn't supposed to be any math in this job. That's why I took it. 6:05, John Schweppe, Director of Policy at the American Principles Project. 6:35, former Virginia State Senator Amanda Chase. 7:05, Mark Chenoweth of New Civil Liberties Alliance. 7:35, Andy Harris, Congressman in Maryland. 8:05, Ron Vitiello, running for Senate in Virginia. And then at 8:35, Byron York, Washington Examiner. I'm Larry O'Connor. That's Julie Gunlock.
Good morning.
Now, we talked a little bit about this yesterday. We should expand on it a little bit more. This young nursing student at the University of Georgia was murdered. And the way the media has treated this story, they'll lie. They'll lie about anything that they need to lie about to either protect their own political class and their team, as it were. It's like you're watching the home team television station for your favorite football game. They'll make excuses. They'll go ahead and do whatever they can to mislead the viewer to make them feel good about their team. Or they'll lie about anything, as we're seeing in the case of this gender non-binary child who died in Oklahoma. They'll twist the facts and lie to harm or attack their political opponents.
That's right.
As we're seeing there. They're trying to turn this young girl into Matthew Shepard, who they also lied about, by the way, and made them some sort of victim and martyr of anti-gay hate, which, of course, there's literally zero evidence that that's the case in Oklahoma. But back to Georgia for a moment. This young nursing student, the way the media first reported this story, Atlanta Journal-Constitution, when they arrested the suspect, described him as an Athens man.
An Athens resident.
Athens resident. And we're not talking about Greece, of course.
Right.
Athens, Georgia. It turns out, actually, right before he became an Athens resident, he was a New York City resident, too.
Interesting.
And he had been pulled over by the New York City Police Department and arrested for endangering a child under the age of 17. We don't have the details on that, but I think that we're going to get it pretty soon. New York police arrested him, and then he was released.
Right. Not deported.
Well, and then it turns out before he was a New York man, he was a Venezuelan man who came to this country seeking asylum because he's a migrant. By the way, this whole use of the word migrant.
Yeah, let's break that down.
My understanding of the term migrant when it comes to people who come across the border illegally, this goes all the way back to California when they didn't want to call them illegal aliens there or illegal immigrants, and they didn't want to call them undocumented workers. They called them migrant workers because seasonally they would cross the border, they would work on farms, and then they would go back home. And they called them migrant workers. These people are not migrant workers.
No, they're not coming here for a specific job.
Right, in any way whatsoever.
Right.
No, and you can call them an asylum seeker if you want, but considering over 90% of the asylum claims are all fraudulent, I think it's best to call them criminal deceivers, perhaps, or just criminal aliens, which is in fact the case. All right, so This guy comes to the country illegally from Venezuela, claims he needs asylum because he's being persecuted back home. He's caught and he's released by ICE because that's the orders of the Biden administration. Finds his way to New York, arrested by NYPD because he had a minor and was endangering that minor. We don't know the details there. Arrested, caught, released. No detainer with ICE, no deportation proceedings there. Sanctuary city. Ends up in Georgia, kidnaps this University of Georgia student allegedly, and murders her.
Yes.
Now, here's how Jake Tapper told the story yesterday on CNN. You just heard me deliver all of the facts to you.
And we also go on. Yes.
Here's how Jake Tapper described the story to his audience.
So Republicans obviously seizing on this horrific tragedy at the University of Georgia. This girl, this nursing student, killed by an undocumented Venezuelan migrant, and they're seizing on this as an example of Biden's failure to protect the American people and to secure the border. Today, President Trump posted on his social media site, Truth Social, quote, "When I am your president, we will immediately seal the border, stop the invasion, and on day one, we will begin the largest deportation operation of illegal criminals in American history. May God bless Laken Riley and her family." That's the poor nursing student that was killed. "Our prayers are with you."
So, of course, the thrust of the segment is...
And they're seizing on this as an example of Biden's failure.
Seizing.
Republicans seizing.
Seizing. Yes.
And what Trump said.
And why shouldn't we?
And not about the
details. Why shouldn't we use this as an example of how Americans are no longer safe? And I don't know if you're going to read the headline that came out about the real issue being female joggers having to worry about being attacked, not female joggers having to worry about an unsecure border, which has allowed criminals and rapists and murderers into the country who can then attack them. No, that's not the issue. It's just like, and what that suggests is that women and female runners have to change their habits.
Right.
We don't need to secure the border.
Well, the message is, yes, women have to change their habits and shouldn't be out running alone, right? This is how the AP took it. And also all men are potential murderers.
Right, all men. It's not, yes, exactly.
All men out there are potentially
that guy that's walking his dog could kill you.
Murders are horrible. They're awful. There's evil in this world. We are a fallen people. And an evil and horrific, violent, disgusting sin permeates our society. When a murder like this takes place and you find out at the end of the day that the person had no business even being here, not just in Georgia, not in New York, but in this country, and just a few years ago, and let me be very clear, I'm going to read the statement from the CBP, from the Customs and Border Protection. Jose Ibarra, a 26-year-old citizen of Venezuela, was arrested by Border Patrol on September 8th after unlawfully entering the United States near El Paso. Let me pause right there. In the Trump administration, first of all, the illegal crossings were brought down to a bare minimum because security was increased, walls were built, and the Border Patrol was told, don't let people cross. So right there, number one, that crossing might not have ever taken place. And you say, well, he was claiming asylum. In the Trump administration, you claim asylum in your home country. Or if you do come to Mexico, you remain in Mexico.
Yes.
Until your asylum petition is heard. So there's two things right there that this administration has changed. All right. Securing the border in the first place and the asylum requests. All right. But then here's the third thing. Arrested September 8th after unlawfully entering in El Paso. He was then paroled and released for further processing. That's called catch and release.
Yes.
Trump ended that on day one. No more catch and release. You arrest somebody, you send them right back out.
That's right.
No more catch and release. Or if they really want to hear their hearing, then we're going to detain them.
Which right away lessens the incentive to come.
That's right. So there's just three things in the first statement here.
You're sending them back and you're reducing the incentive to come.
Directly related to Joe Biden and his border policy that led. Now, there's more. The New York police arrested him. He was then released. No detainer, no deportation after that arrest, cashless bail, all that stuff you can point to the Democrats. But no, the real story here, Julie.
So Republicans obviously seizing on this horrific tragedy.
Tapper.
Tapper and CNN. And you want to, and then when you see polls and you see how are people voting, how are people supporting Biden, how are people supporting this, how are they voting that way when the results come in? It's because they watch CNN.
That's right.
Because they watch Jake Tapper.
Just like the people who don't think the food costs have gone up because they watch CNN and they're gaslit and they believe it.
You know what? We do have a little bit more on this. We'll continue on this topic. I didn't realize we had more of it. That's why I sort of stretched it out. So let's get to more.
So Republicans obviously seizing on this horrific tragedy at the...
Jake Tapper, he's one of the good ones, you know.
Yeah.
Jake Tapper informing his audience about this murder of Laken Riley, a University of Georgia student, has sort of become a symbol, a touchstone. She's not, sadly, the only one. There have been many other murders at the hands of people who never should have been allowed in this country and certainly not allowed to stay in this country. And then you hear of arrests made and you hear that ICE is not interacting with police departments to deport these people. There was a time in this country where if you crossed the border illegally and you're found out and you're discovered, you were deported. And then we relaxed that. And then that changed to, well, if you're in this country illegally, you're found to have committed a crime, then you're deported. And then they relaxed that and they changed that. Now, if you're found in this country illegally and you commit a crime that is something serious, you know, rape or murder, then you'll be deported. Right.
Not
and
anymore.
Now they're not even looking at that.
There's one thing about this ICE statement that I wanted to focus on just for a second.
Please.
I know we've got more, but this line, when he was arrested in New York City, he was charged with acting in a manner to injure a child less than 17.
Yeah.
Along with some sort of traffic violation.
I'm guessing it was driving without a driver's license since he was in this country.
85,000 children that have come over the border are missing in this country, and no one's talking about it.
Yeah.
No one's talking about 85,000 children who've probably been trafficked. Many are probably doing some sort of illegal work. Many of them have been sex trafficked, and no one's talking about
Great
it. And
point.
it looks like this guy might have been involved in that as well.
Yeah, and this language from the CBP, by the way, who understand is under the direct control of Alejandro Mayorkas, said he was released by NYPD before a detainer could be issued. I want to pause there for a moment because a detainer is a referral from a local county or state police department to federal ICE agents to proceed with federal detention and then deportation. But that doesn't happen in sanctuary cities. So when it says NYPD released this guy before a detainer could be issued, I would like to know from the CBP if a detainer ever would have been issued.
Why are the
Because last I checked, New York
not
is
working with ICE?
New York is a sanctuary city.
Right.
They're not working with ICE.
Right.
They're not dealing directly with them. All right. And then there's this, as you already alluded to, the Associated Press decides they're going to do an article about it. The killing of a nursing student out for a run highlights the fears of solo female athletes.
It makes me so mad.
And in the story, they describe the murderer as an Athens resident.
Yes,
Again,
just some guy out riding his bike.
Mary Catherine Ham is not only a female and an athlete, but an alumnus of University of Georgia. She felt compelled to say something. Our friend Mary Catherine on social media. Hi, AP. Female athlete here. I ran this exact trail every single week of my college career. I guess I could have been snuffed out before I graduated, had a career, family, and the professionals at the Associated Press would lie about the suspect because it fits a preferred narrative. Ibarra is not merely an Athens resident, and Laken Riley and every other student was put in danger by not enforcing laws and allowing a man arrested 3 times after crossing the border to hang out and work on campus. He had to escalate to alleged murder to be held and or risk deportation. Good policies. Good work. Story even cites the 2018 murder of Molly Tibbetts in Iowa as a reason solo female runners should be worried, also without noting that her killer was an illegal immigrant as well. You know, we talk about media bias all the time and the propaganda that we get from the mainstream media or the corporate media or whatever you want to call them. They make choices. There is deliberate choice here in all of these stories. Okay, we got to write this article about this murderer, this suspect. Do we refer to him as a illegal immigrant from Venezuela, or do we refer to him as an Athens resident?
Yeah.
They chose Athens
that.
resident, and they did it for a reason.
And ultimately who this hurts are young women and all residents, frankly, because, he attacked a woman, but he could have attacked anyone or been driving drunk or because he had some traffic violations or injured a child as he had done before. And that choice that the AP made to make this sound like any other crime, the reason they did that is they do not want this getting back to Joe Biden, hurting Joe Biden, right, and pointing back to the border policies, which are flooding our nation with criminals.
Yeah, and more than hurting Joe Biden, which is certainly a paramount thing, even worse, helping Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Who, again, had policies in place that would have done a lot. Did it completely end it? Of course not. It sure made a huge difference. By the way, Biden's people now realizing that, hey, maybe this border thing's a problem. He's going to be visiting the border on Thursday all of a sudden because it's an election year, and he's going to have company. President Trump will be there at the same time. Mm-hmm. That should be a real contrast. Coming up at 7:35, Representative Andy Harris of Maryland will be here, and we'll discuss that and